distinguished guests, our Prof. Young there. It's a bit dark. I cannot quite see most of the other people, but I'm sure there are very many distinguished guests in the audience and the Kenyans. Thank you so much for coming. My brief is quite simple, as you have been told. It is really to talk about how this book has come about. I understand that in the media nowadays it's being called the backstory of things. What's the story behind the story? So I'll be quite brief because other people will talk about the content. I'll just talk about the process. This book originated from two related observations or situations some months ago. One of those, and some of my age mates and peers and those people who might also be older than me will appreciate, is the difficulty that we find ourselves in having political conversation with young people. Because for some reason that I may not understand very well, our politics has been denured of historical context. So we are discussing contemporary politics, but the young people who are the majority in the country do not have a historical context of why we are, and why we fight for the things that we do. So, for people like me, I realized not so long ago that Saba Saba is not history, which has just passed. It's a contemporary event because we were there. But for 27 years ago, for more than half of our adult population, is a very long time ago. They were either children or not born. So for them, that's history, but it hasn't made the history books yet. So there is a gap that the very important political context is missing from the discourse, and we're expecting young people to participate in politics without understanding where we are coming from, and therefore lacking a good sense of being able to make the informed choices that we think that they should. So questions like, what is this second liberation that you people keep talking about? Yeah? And what is your beef with Uhuruto? They're just nice, political, good, sort of tech-savvy digital politicians. And what is this thing you keep calling status quo? What is this status quo you talk about? For many of the young people, they have no idea what those things are because they are yet to make it to study, subjects of study, because they are still very contemporary. Yet these are very significant events informing our contemporary politics. The second dimension of that story is that many people, especially in recent years, know that our presidential candidate, and our president hopefully most certainly from the 9th, travels abroad a lot. And when he goes abroad, we know that he goes to give speeches and lectures. We see him, like we saw him the other day at the Wailing Wall, where he had gone to give a lecture at some very important think tank in Israel. But we do not know, many people do not know what he goes there to talk about. Yeah, because the things he says there are not conveyed back here. And if you are invited time and again to go and speak to the world's premier universities and think tanks, obviously you must have something of intellectual value to say. Those are not places where you go to give this kind of sort of cut and paste speeches that are given in sort of various local forums. There must be something of intellectual value which people expect you to share. So in a sense, you need to have something between your ears to be invited in that place. And many people, other than those of us who interact with our presidential candidate regularly and at that level, really do not know that he is a person who thinks very deeply about the issues confronting the country, other than just doing something about them. He actually thinks very deeply and has thought about them very deeply for a very long time, has got very clear ideas about some very radical ideas on some things, for instance, which are in that book. And you do not know it until you challenge him on some of those things. That he has some very, very strong and very informed and very well thought out views about many of our issues. So, we felt, some of the people around, as we approached this campaign, that there are many young people out there who would benefit from merging these two stories, understanding these issues from his perspective, as one of the people who has probably thought more deeply and longer about these issues than many of us, as well as providing historical context to the politics. And that was the easy part. The difficult part was actually to take a lot of that material from his speeches, some of it from conversations, and also from the historical material, and to synthesize that material into something that would be, in our view, hopefully interesting and engaging and accessible to our young people. If we were to do this for sort of the reading, intellectual, academic audiences, it wouldn't be that difficult, because that the language for doing that is quite easy, and we're used to it. But do it with the ambition that it should be a book that will be read perhaps even by high school students, was a very challenging thing to do. We hope that we have gone some way in achieving that. As you can see from the format of the book, we have tried to make it look very user-friendly. We appreciate that our children nowadays don't have much patience for things longer than 140 characters. So we are trying to meet them halfway. And I'm sure it's quite a challenge, but from the little feedback we have, we feel that we're confident that we've gone some way in achieving that. So on my part, as one of the people who have worked on this project and then sort of put some of the ideas together, I wish to thank our presidential candidate very much for availing both his time and material in the middle of a campaign to be able to actually see this project through, and giving it a lot of support. I wish to thank my co-conspirators on this project, that is Dennis Onyango in particular, who has written most of the speeches that our presidential candidate has been making in recent past. I have woken up several occasionally by Dennis to find him some data on the progress in reducing malaria, for instance, because it is required for some such presentation somewhere. And also Sarah Elakin, who is, she's not here, I wish she was, because she is a fantastic editor. I have written a lot for many years, but quite frankly, I have not seen editorial work of the quality that Sarah has put into this book. There are many other people I wish to thank, because he probably would not have the opportunity to have someone thanking our publisher, Lawrence Njagi, who also has been, he's here, he will, I think, have an opportunity to say a thing or two at some point. But I wish to thank you very much for the production work. He has done a splendid production job. And also all those people who have participated in many ways in organizing this event and the process. Thank you very much. I believe that as we get this book out more, I think the youth of this country will really appreciate everything that everybody involved in this has done, however big and however little. So thank you very much, and hope you really enjoy the rest of the evening.
Asante sana daktari. Asante sana daktari. As you have heard, the challenge for many young people like myself is to understand how the past struggles that Honorable Raila Odinga has led relate to today. I was telling the story of Sabasaba. When we were at Sabasaba just recently, I was telling them that when the first Sabasaba happened, I was only 7 years old. So you can see that for us, we need all these things to be put in perspective. And to do just that, we have some young people here who need to explain or to tell us their perspectives on the book. Having had an opportunity to go through it, we would like to see the world through the eyes of young people and the challenges that they face today. So we have a few young people. I will call them in order. Please just come and share your perspectives on the book. We will start with the lovely Angel Mbuthia, who's here with us. Please come to the stage. Asante sana.
Honorable Raila Odinga, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, and Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. In those documentaries, you guys look more handsome. For us young people, the beginning, the struggle for this country, what we see is in documentaries, and we imagine all that. And when you're going for trials and all that, people look more handsome. I just said more handsome. Please mark my words. Yes, and mine will come from something on economy and agriculture. And here in this book, Honorable Raila Odinga talks about his view on agriculture and why we are stagnating, and I'll pick an excerpt from that. The dominant role that manufacturing has historically played in the process of economic development has overshadowed and often led to the neglect of agriculture. Yet agriculture has always been central to socio-economic transformation. Agriculture remains our leading export sector to the global market. We are the leading exporter of black tea and one of the leading sources of fresh produce to the European market. In much of the rest of the developing world, export agriculture is plantation-based, typically controlled by large multinational corporations. One of the attractive aspects of our export agriculture is that it is predominantly a smallholder economy. The tea industry directly supports more than 500,000 smallholder farmers. Its net worth, that central Kenya, where export agriculture is concentrated, has also higher average incomes and a lower incidence of poverty. By contrast, the import substituting sugar industry has not brought prosperity to Western Kenya, even with the subsidies and protection from imports. This demonstrates that the case for export orientation vis-à-vis import substitution is not limited to manufacturing. Agriculture production is of course limited by the availability of arable land, and it is doubtful that we can continue expanding tea production much longer without eating into our forests. That said, there is still considerable scope to expand export agriculture. Most of Western Kenya, for example, enjoys a climate ideal for horticulture. The eastern lowlands and the coast are suitable for fruits. Currently, a lot of mangoes produced there go to waste every year. our coffee production has declined from 130,000 tons at its peak in the late 80s to less than 50,000 tons today. Contrary to a popular view, the conversion of coffee plantations has contributed little to this decline. The main cause is not poached reforms and corruption, in short, cartels. And we messed up the coffee industry just as the global demand for high-quality products, and such as we produce, as taking off. If we had kept up production, we would be earning as much from coffee as we do from tea. So I was asked to take an excerpt of what inspired me the most in this book. And if I was asked to write a one-page manifesto, what I would talk about is putting food on the table for every Kenyan 3 times a day. It is a shame that we as a country, as big as Kenya, as proud as Kenya, as beautiful as Kenya, with elite people in it, can afford to have someone stand in front of them and tell them that there is no food for you. Kenya as a country is like a matatu coming from Buruburu, going to town, but it is going through Rongai, and the passengers are doing nothing about it. As much as our leaders have let us down, Kenyans must also learn how to take charge. Honorable Raila Odinga, in his book, In the Quest for Nationhood, he has pointed out how resourceful we already are and how we can move forward with what we have. He has also pointed out the low levels of tea and coffee production and voicing out the cause of it being corruption. He also goes ahead to say that the only way to increase production for these cash crops is by eating into our forest. But I feel that we have not collectively exhausted what we already have. We have not ventured into irrigation, and again, we have not ventured into farming for crops according to the regions where they best thrive. Our neighbors from Uganda here, they have the average person waking up to a breakfast of well-done matoke and peanut sauce, which is locally grown, compared to us, who wake up to a cup of tea with a bloomed mandazi which has nothing inside. And that is what I call starvation. And last but not least, young people, we are 8 million strong. We have what it takes to change this country. We must give directions and scope on where we want our country to move to. Tribalism doesn't put food on your table. Corruption eats us all, and unemployment is a national disaster. Let's down our tools, and on 8th August, we come out and speak in our full strength by sending home academic dwarfs, incompetent leaders, and kings and thugs in suits for us to provide a better life for our children and the future generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angela. A round of applause for Angela, please. Yeah, before we go to the next speaker, I want to recognize the presence of our incoming Deputy President, the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. Karibu sana sana. Thank you. We will hear from another young person. David Jesse, please come on stage.
Thank you. This is such a great task, and today I had to take some anxiolytics before I came here. So I'm privileged to be here today to give my impression of Raila's new book, The Quest for Nationhood. Okay, we've seen in advanced democracies like in the US, in Europe, we have political leaders write books that chronicle their political lives. But such are very rare in Africa. And today, we are privileged to be here to listen to Kenya's story from Raila Amolo Odinga. I think Raila Amolo Odinga is the only leader, or is one of the leaders in Africa who have written books. So
you have a leader like Uhuru Kenyatta, when he exits power, we'll forget about him because nothing is recorded. And also, nothing is worth recording about Uhuru Kenyatta or William Ruto. What do we record? What do we record for another generation? Nothing. So today, I'll talk about devolution. I read the book, and the part that touched me in the book was on devolution. As a young person who's going to school, I believe that devolution is the socio-economic equalizer of our time. I mean, devolution closes the gaps that have existed before, and that are a product of the sessional paper number 10 of the 1965, that with the exclusion that have existed before, they find that we have marginalized areas like Mandera are going to be stories of the past with devolution. So as a young person, I believe in devolution. And with this new system of devolution, I believe that we can devolve power. We give power to the people so that the people can decide and break the bureaucracy that exists with the recent forms of government. With devolution, we are going to devolve justice. With devolution, we are going to devolve our economy. And with devolution, we can also devolve our history so that each and every region in this country can have its own history. So Mr. Odinga, I know that your government is committed to devolution. It is the best thing that can move our country forward. We strengthen devolution, we give more resources to devolution, and we devolve all the major critical aspects of our economy. Thank you. And one last request, Mr. Odinga. I am a student, and I'm requesting you to please, that in your government, you pay our lecturers so that we don't have to keep postponing our futures. Currently, we are not in school, but we should be in school because lecturers are on strike, because we have an insensitive government. And we know as young people, that a government that does not care about our education, does not care about our future. We want a government that cares about our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. You'll agree with me that these young people are woke, as they say, that they are politically aware, that they know what it is that they want for their country. Lastly, we have Mr. Mohammad Doyle, who will also take us through his perspectives on the book. Karibu sana.
Hamjambo. Nasa Tibim. Nasa Tialala. Tumesema kwamba hii ni mkutano wa youth. Kwa hivyo we must bring some youth liveliness. Yama namna gani? Okay, I am Arab Doyo. Mohammad Doyo, some know me as Arab Doyo. I am privileged to have this opportunity to stand here. I am from Isiolo, and I think I am the first person from Isiolo to stand in front of the incoming president of this country. So I will go through what I read the book, and I want to break down in each chapter what I got about, what I read about, and I can tell you for once, if you are a young person in this forum here, in this event, you need this book as soon as now. Yeah. Yes. The first chapter speaks about development. What do we understand about development in the Kenyan context? Here is where Raila Amolo Odinga breaks down and also talks about the importance of one aspect of development that is underplayed so much in Kenya, and that is political development. He breaks down the political, from since independence, post-independence, and up to now. And in the first chapter, there's something he talks about. Quoting Chinua Achebe, he asks, when did the rain start beating us? When did the rain start beating us? He asks and he explains to all of us, especially in a youthful language, in a language everyone here understands, and if, after reading that chapter, you know where we went wrong. Chapter 2 is on the new constitution. In this chapter, you appreciate his efforts, you appreciate what this country has gone through. Since the Lancaster Conference, the spirit of the same, how the people were putting up what was in their minds. You also appreciate the transition system from colonialism to independence. You also appreciate the multi-party electoral politics of 1992. You come until 1997, IPG. You come forward until 2000, where the Wanjiko Constitution came. You also get to realize about the two drafts, the Bomas draft. You also get to know about the Wako draft, what happened. You also get to learn how ODM came into place in 2005. And eventually, you come to realize how the current constitution we are working with, the 2010 constitution, came into place. It is a journey, a very relentless journey and a big one. So the young people in this forum, the young people in this country, you really need to know about how you've come to this place, that you can tweet, you can tell the president anything. You can, as Article 33 speaks about freedom of expression. You can talk freely. You need to know what gave you that freedom. That is the Constitution. Chapter 3 speaks about economic development, two different journeys. Where did the rain start beating us? Raila Amolo Odinga in this book speaks about the Asian tigers, speaks about how in 1960s our GDP, our income as a country, our economical growth was almost at par. Where did the rain start beating us? He explains candidly about the two journeys. That was where we lost it. About one was import substitution. That is the one that our market was only for issues imports. We did not liberalize to focus on export-led industrialization. This is where industrialization is based upon producing goods for the external market, not just a local market. It is deep, it is very comprehensive, and if you really want to know this employment we have here, where did it originate, you will go back there and you will understand. Chapter 4, how do democracy and good governance affect development? Here you are told of the interrelation between the two. All of these are interdependent. Without good governance, you don't have development. Mr. Raila Amolo Odinga talks about Cape Verde, talks about Mauritius, talks about Botswana. All these are African nations. I will not explain what they've done, so get the book, find out about these nations, and compare them with Kenya. Chapter 6, the success of devolution. Raila Amolo Odinga talks about how, since 1960, you know, we had Majimbo, and the spirit of Majimbo, and then later we had devolution. What was the importance of devolution? He also bisects deeply on these mates that you have around every time. People say devolution inaanguka, devolution nini. Hawa watu ambao you just allocate 15%, a very small percent. So you will understand how the success, what was the motive behind devolution. Chapter 7, combating corruption. Here, Raila Amolo Odinga explicitly tells us about corruption and how we can end it. He also reminds us that we have one government that has seen unprecedented corruption in the history of Kenya like no other. He also tells us how to go about it, how to overcome about it. He talks about an imperial presidency, a presidency that is seen to be above the law, a presidency that is seen as too powerful that it affects all the other arms of the government. We are also told about He also now, on this part, tells us how to solve it. And one of his suggestions is about parliamentary system of government. I know you will read that and you will understand more. He also tells us about why every other person in the public service wants to be rich. He tells us about the Denver Commission of 1971, which approved public servants to make as much money as they want, willingly, and with all the goodwill. Read about it and you'll understand about that corruption. Chapter 8, which way for our economy, this is where now he talks about how we can grow this country in terms of GDP, in terms of youth employment, in terms of making sure we move from capital-intensive to labor-intensive economy. Get the book, you'll understand more. Chapter 9, how do we achieve opportunities and social progress? Here is whereby he tells us about the aspects of as much. He tells us on issues pertaining to social progress, about things which are captured in our constitution, sanitation, nutrition, good health, these things, even the poor at the low level, how can it reach to them? Chapter 10, we face neither east nor west, we face forward. Here is where Raila Amolo Odinga tells us about the ideological grounding he holds. He talks about the China issues candidly there. He also bisects the issues of post-Cold War and in relation to Kenya, and candidly puts us, Kwame Nkrumah said, we neither face east nor west, we face forward, and we are in control of our destiny. Chapter 11, which is the last one, is the road ahead. Here is where he talks about his candidature. He also tells us how he will ensure that all those problems and all those ideas that he has, how he will put them to action once he is elected as the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdoyo. Please let's give another round of applause to all the young people who have spoken. For the voters in Nairobi, I want you to take Angela's message very, very seriously. Academic dwarfs, incompetent leaders, and thugs in suits. That's all you need to remember on election day. We will move very quickly to hear from a man who has now become famous for shooting straight from the hip every morning on our TV sets, to also give us some perspectives on the journey that Kenya is taking towards nationhood and the book by Honorable Raila Odinga. Please welcome Professor Herman Manyora. Karibu sana.
Honorable Raila Odinga, fellow members of the Pentagon, my senator, I can see him there, Senator Khanedi George, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very impressed with the young man who has just finished summarizing the book, but I was almost worried because he was almost reading it, and I was wondering if people buy it. You say when Baba has read it, there's no point of reading it. But when Baba has written it, we must read it. So I don't know whether we have it. Do we really have this book? Yeah. The organizers are a little poor, eh? Well, as the young man has summarized, and as Ndee said, this book is basically about politics, but there's also a bit of economics in this book. a bit of what the author calls development. If I'm asked to talk about something, I say both positive and a bit of negative things, but because Baba is around, I'll say the bad things on TV. Today I'll say only the good things. But just a whisper of what I consider the bad thing of the book and the entire NASA campaign. In an election such as this, I don't think matters of development are as important as some people might want to think. And I fault NASA for playing into the hands of Jubilee by bringing development on the table and mainstreaming it. That's the only thing they had to say. Even though they have missed it, you can't compete them on that front because they have something to show. You don't have much to show for that. I think the people of NASA, Baba is here. You had carried the Kenyan heart. The people were with you because of the rallying question of your campaign. People were interested in three things, which is what I call the software. And now you have gone into hardware. The software was tribalism, corruption, theft, wheezy, poverty, hunger. Those three were the issues that Kenyans were listening to, and those things were resonating with the Kenyans. So when you bring this manifesto of yours on board, you think about it. I'll talk about it later. For today, let's talk about the good things. The good things that is a good book. It is a book that calls on us to know the meaning of history, why if you don't know where you are coming from, you are unlikely to go where you are going, to get there in time, and for the purpose for which you set the journey. So history is important. I know many people know history. If you watched in 2008, when our own son, Obama, was delivering his victory speech, I like the one that I before it by John McCain, speaking from Arizona, what he referred to the beautiful Arizona evening, as he was conceding defeat. But the one of Obama, if you watched, and I'm sure many Kenyans watched, Winnie Oprah was shedding tears. And I tell our ladies, you always lead a man sometimes. So she looked for a shoulder to lean on us. She didn't even know. The shoulder she found was Jesse Jackson. What was the guy doing? He was also crying. Yeah, so somebody is leaning on you, they are shedding tears, you're also crying. He was not crying because Obama was becoming president. History was rolling through. He was seeing history before his eyes of slavery, of slave trade, of the dungeons, that of every one slave that survived to reach America. Many more had died. Others have been tossed in the sea. This is the history. He was remembering 1901 when Roosevelt invited Booker T. Washington to the White House. And there was an uproar from people, including the press. The press is always behind. They are always reporting things. Anyway, so history is important. And so this book gives us out a bit of history. They have said, because there are many young people who do not understand where we come from, and that's why they may not appreciate. And in order for us to get national, that the book is talking about, and I think national simply means, are we in a geographical expression, or are we a people who feel together, who love our country and love each other? And are there things that stand in the way of that love of our country? And this quest Raila is talking about is not just as such. A quest is a serious search that takes time and pain sometimes. In Greek mythology and literature, somebody had gone through a lot of pain, a lot of time to achieve what he was going for as a lesson and things like that. So the history in this book, which is what I'll pick, but very briefly, the history is not about a chronology of events in Kenya. No. But it is important in understanding the dream. To me, what I picked from this book is about a dream.
a dream at two levels. The first level is that we dream to be in Canaan, the land of milk, honey, and a little gusa and changa, according to William Ruto. That is the dream. But there is yet another dream, the dream that we shall realize that dream. And that is what this book is all about. The dream that has kept the Kenyan people on course. If you want to understand this, that dream that has kept people on course, just go through the book and look at the history. Begin in 1963. What happens? We get independence. The women you let 5 times because it's a boy. While they are doing that, other people are busy doing other things. While the leadership of Singapore is creating an economic miracle, our leadership are busy annexing tracts of land and engaging in primitive accumulation. While Lee Wang is visualizing a Singapore that belongs to the first world, free of corruption, independent of debt and everything. And by the way, Honorable Raila Odinga, if you get the presidency, I know others will say when you get, let me say if you get the presidency, this debt you can deal with it. It's a small matter, 4 trillion shillings. We are not collecting our taxes. If we collect the taxes in this country, we can pay this debt in 5 years and remain free. So while Lee Wang was visualizing that kind of Singapore.
Lee Kuan Yew.
Yeah. What?
Lee Kuan Yew.
Lee
Kuan Yew.
Wang. Yeah, Lee. While Lee was doing that, our people here were trying to create a tribal hegemony. That's why we are where we are. You move on to around 65, 66, and you begin to see that dream. When things were going bad, we didn't give up that dream, that one day we'll be in Canaan. In 1969, a series of events, very bad of them, they could have destroyed this country. KPU is banned, people are shot in Kisumu, Tomboy is killed. You would have thought Kenya would collapse. It didn't collapse. That dream, that there will be one time we will get there. In 1975, JM was killed. People said, even a KPU can be killed. That dream that keeps us hoping one day we'll get to Canada kept us there. In 1978, when Kenyatta died, as a mature man, there was gloom all over Kenya. You would have thought people would celebrate that at long last this guy is dead. No, they didn't celebrate. There was a bit of Kenyatta, a bit of Kenya in Kenyatta, and a bit of Kenyatta in Kenya. And because we loved Kenya, because we had the Kenyan dream, we mourned Kenyatta and we cried. You see that kind of thing, isn't it? From around 1989, people struggled. People were detained. Many people, you see a young here, they have suffered. Orengo, Matiba, if you see Matiba today. Some people almost gave up. In 1992-97, we got a chance to change. As it puts in the book, we didn't. Some people could have given up. But that dream, that one day we'll get to Canada, kept us moving. That is 1997. 2002 is the worst. We said we have it. Oh, at last, we got it. You know what Kibaki did? At that time, anybody could break. Any Kenyan could break. And I'm sure many people gave up. Say, sasa inaonekana hii hatutaweza, acha ikae. I remember Kajwang sometimes, I don't know when, the late Kajwang, Mapambana. He said, Wani, you think it's only us who will benefit if Kenya becomes good? We can say, wacha ikae. At that time, we almost gave up. But we did. That dream that one day Kenya will be a good country kept us moving. You can see 2007, what happened. There are many who believe Raila won. Is that right? Don't ask me what I believe. But since I know a little English, when I listened to Krigler, I thought you were saying Kibaki didn't win. Purely from English point of view. Because if an Englishman says you could not tell who won. If somebody won, he will tell you somebody won. That is English. So strictly from English, I suspect perhaps Mzee Baba will be part of the Kenya. It is a quest. A quest is a long struggle for something. It takes time and pain Finally, you might get it. Let's pray for you. In 2007, and the book brings out this very well, we almost burnt ourselves. We almost cleared this country. We are almost going down. We were helped by Mkapa, Gracia Machel, this other guy from Ghana, but finally Annan, Condoleezza Rice in America. But you know what stopped the violence? What made us stop and check? It is that dream. That we still have the possibility that with all this, we will have a country. That dream is what has kept us. And that dream goes through, if you read this book, you see the history presented by Honorable Raila Odinga. It's not about a chronology of events. It is just, there must be something that is keeping us against all odds. Other people will have burned their country. And I think we have that dream. And in this book, Honorable Raila Odinga appreciates the role people play, the common people, not the men in suits. And on page, the book in page, I think since you don't have it, but on page 28, in which he says, I now believe the eventual remaking of the Constitution to be the most important national achievement of our post-independence country of history. The process by which we have achieved it, the fact that it was born of a political struggle and was a people-driven process. I believe in the people. But you see, a dream, and I see this through this book, a dream alone is not enough. You must put substance in that dream. You must put substance, and it also comes with sacrifice. To go to Canaan will call for sacrifice. I think he can't say it very openly. People must sacrifice. Beginning with Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, he put his life on the line. That was a sacrifice to realize this thing. The men and women who are detained, maimed, and even killed up to the time Kenyatta leaves the stage. Martin Shkuku left a crippled man from detention. The men and women who suffered all the way to the multi-party struggle, that was the sacrifice they have made. I think my reading of the book is that the final struggle must be made now. The final sacrifice. It is because of this that I appreciate the sacrifice I appreciate the sacrifice of Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. That is an enormous sacrifice. If you are following what was going on, the pressure he went through, and even talked about his age. He's not a boy. It's an enormous sacrifice. I recognize the presence of Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi. It's an enormous sacrifice. And of Moses Masika Wetangula. Enormous sacrifice. For country. To realize the Kenyan dream. The sacrifice by Isaac Ruto, the good Ruto. Here is a man who even stands the risk of losing his job as governor. But in pursuit of that dream, in the realization that there is a bigger thing for this country, he sacrificed. Now is time for the men and women around Raila Amolo Odinga and Musalia Mudavadi and George Khaled. It is time for those men to give the sacrifice. Why am I saying this as I sit down? I'm saying this because to realize that dream, you need an enormous sacrifice. I will give you 3 reasons why Jubilee would beat NASA. NASA has the numbers. I've said this on TV many times. You have the numbers, but you can be beaten. There are 3 major reasons. Next Sunday, I'll put it in the paper. This Sunday, I'm telling them why they will lose. But the other Sunday, I'll tell you why you will lose. Let me just pick one. You are facing a person who is determined to win and to retain power, at all means. When you are facing an enemy of that time, you give it your all. You must make the kind of sacrifices people like Alonso Musyoka made. I therefore laugh at you people sometimes when I see the shenanigans going on in Homa Bay, Siaya, where else? Migori, small people fighting over small things to be governor. Seek ye first the political kingdom. You cannot change this country until you get state power. Until you get state power. Yes. Being governor is not state power. Those are small things. When I see Boni Khalwana, my friend, fighting with Oparanya, I say, look at these people. They don't know what they are doing. They don't know power. You are facing an enemy who knows power and the sweetness of power. Believe me, take this to the bank. Before we get to the election, there will be no independent candidate in Jubilee strongholds. Not one. Maybe PK. They know the sweetness of power. You don't seem to know. When I see Omar Hassan fighting Joe, I laugh. I say, oh, these guys don't know power. Joe ought to be campaigning for NASA all over the country, not fighting Awiti or who is this other guy? No, I'm telling you, that is how power is. Your opponents know power. Your opponents know power. They know it is sweet, and they don't want to let go. You are still fighting over small things as if you don't know what power is. In order to go to Canaan, sacrifices will have been made. Even once you cross River Jordan, Baba, the task will even be tougher than winning the election. You will need to re-engineer our constitution. You will therefore need legislative, administrative changes, which you can only do if you have the numbers in parliament.
Exactly.
Because in order to change this country, if you win, you must run Jubilee out of town.
Yeah.
If you don't run them out of town, you will be a president, but there's nothing you'll do. If you want to change the constitution, the people, like you have faith in the people in the book here, you have said, they will vote for the referendum. But first, you must get 24 counties.
Exactly.
How do you get 24 counties when Hangati and the Mutoro are fighting Wangamachi in Bungoma? You can't. You will not get 24. You need 24, 25. You need 170 members of parliament. You need senators. Senior George. Huh? You need to get so that the judge may become the Speaker of Senate, and I go in for Senate after he has left. I'm praying for you in a very selfish. Anyway, on a serious note, what I'm saying, this book is about delivering the Kenyan dream. And that Kenyan dream is possible. If you read the book, you see the Kenyan dream is possible. It is a quest, but even a quest must end somewhere, so that we don't end up like Sisyphus. You've read in the Greek mythology, the fellow who was cast to push a stone to the hill, only to see it coming down again. Every day we'll push a big boulder up the hill. That's not the quest Raila Odinga is talking about. Raila is talking about a dream that is possible. And therefore, those who love Raila and those who believe in him, those who read this book will see that dream. And I hope, from where I stand, since that dream is possible, I hope you will help him to realize that dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. As usual, you did not disappoint. You shoot from the hip as promised. The only thing that I can say is that having listened to the history of this country, I think this salvation has been handed down to successive generations for too long. But as my sister said here, this current generation is 8 million strong. I want to assure you that we as a generation will not be handing down this work to any future generations again. We will finish this thing on the 8th of August 2017. At this particular juncture, there was a very honorable man who had been invited to speak, the Right Reverend Timothy Njoya was scheduled to speak, but he's not been able to reach here. Now, I don't think there's any Kenyan who, when he hears the name Njoya and closes their eyes, cannot see the image of the police baton and Njoya on the ground with one leg in the air. Is there any Kenyan who can do that? That image has been seared in our conscience and psyche as a country, as a reflection of the years that have gone past. And for many people, especially the young people, they imagine that it is not possible to go back to those days. Recently, one of the great men in this country passed away, and somebody asked me, Sifuna, what is the greatest memory you have of Nicholas Biwott? And I remember growing up, we were not allowed to say his name. We were socialized never to say the name Biwott in public. We lived in a country of fear, and that is the truth. So as a young person, if you imagine we cannot go back to those years, just remember, last week when we were at Sabasaba, the headline for the nation was a warning that they were going to come after WhatsApp. It is possible to go back to the years of the sedition laws. All this progress that Professor has taken us through, it took so many years to get where we are. But don't imagine that it requires the same amount of time to unravel. It can unravel in one day. As we saw on that fateful day, on the floor of Parliament, when they passed the Security Laws Amendment laws. All of you saw it. That took us 10 steps back. Finally, I will just say, as a generation, Honorable Raila, we sometimes get embarrassed that the people who fought for us when we were still on our mother's feet are the same people who are expected to fight for us. It embarrasses me that Orengo still has to be the one going to court. When he was going to court when I was 7 years old, surely as a generation it is time for us to pick up the cudgels and also do our part. That is why on the 8th, you're not being asked to go and fight the tear gas that Njoya fought or the batons. We're just saying, carry your ID, cast your ballot, and change this country. At this particular moment, let me invite a man who knows the struggle, a man who will also speak on his perspective of the journey to nationhood that we've taken as a country. He's the current senator for Kisumu and aspiring governor, the Honorable Professor Nyong'o. Please come to the stage, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? Can we say how are you to everybody next to you? How are you? Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to appeal to you tonight. Let us dedicate this night to Raila Amolo Odinga. And please, don't be impatient to leave this room except when you are going to the loo. Tuko pamoja? Thank you very much. I would like to be given a very difficult responsibility, but a responsibility which nonetheless I'd like to perform because it gives me an honor, but also it gives me humility, and that is the responsibility to introduce Raila Amolo Odinga, who has just walked out with his team. I hope he's doing what I asked. You can go for a short time, but please be here. Many years ago, when people like Sifuna were still 7 and others younger, and others perhaps not yet born, some of us followed in the footsteps of the founding fathers of the Kenyan liberation. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Tom Mboya, Mzee Kenyatta, Bildad Kagia, you name them. Arvin Skode, Ronald Ngala, and many others. By the time we came into the scene in the late 60s, Kenya had started changing. Kenya had started changing in the sense that the vision that we had when we sang the national anthem in December '63. Some of the very senior people in the state, led by Jomo Kenyatta, had decided that we must depart from that vision, and some resisted. Those who resisted in 1966 were actually a majority in parliament. The total number of people who are going to break away from KANU and join KPU were 97. So when they broke out and went for a parliamentary group meeting to decide they were breaking out, they had that an amendment to the constitution was being brought that stipulated that if you left KANU, you had to go back to seek fresh mandate from the people. And that's where the first sacrifice started. Do you want to oppose KANU from within, or do you want to force KANU from without? If you want to oppose KANU from without, then you must go and seek a fresh mandate from the people. From the number 97, those who were valiant enough to face KANU from without reduced to 27. And they went to seek fresh mandate from the people. Of those 27 who went to seek fresh mandate, I would say 19 were rigged out. I think 18 were rigged out, only 9 went to parliament as members of KPU. So in order to resist the departure from the original vision, you can see the kind of sacrifice that were made, and people were great enough and strong enough to stand with the vision. Isitoshe, when they went to parliament as KPU against KANU, they were a formidable parliamentary group. They were a formidable opposition. Later on, when we were in the 19th, we were in Fort Kenya, and we were only about 32 or 35, Captain? 31. We were a formidable opposition. And you can see, it doesn't matter how many of you are there. It's how determined you are, and with that kind of leadership. V.I. Lenin once said, better fewer, but better. Better fewer, but better. Lots of people in this audience will remember how multi-party came about. And you might have come across a face called the Young Turks. In fact, that lady was saying to us, Angela, you people look great in those photos. You are more handsome. And I reminded her, that's not very fair. We are still handsome. Makofi So Young Turks were Paul Mwite. Then we were all together with Raila Amolo Odinga, Bitobe Manyara, James Orengo, Joe Ager, Muhisa Kitui, and myself. And what brought us at Young Turks was that we felt, as when our leaders were demobilized, Oginga Odinga and the others, that we really needed to rise up, as Sifuna has said, to the occasion and defend the vision. I remember when I was teaching at the university in 1977, that's where I first was there as a full-time lecturer. I'd been there briefly in 71 as a special lecturer. I heard of Raila Amolo Odinga. I had not met him very formally. The person I'd met in the Odinga family was Jaramogi himself and Uburu. We were doing things separately. Finally, when we came together is when Edgar Tekere was here. Raila tells this story in detail, The Flames of Freedom, and I urge you to read that book. When you have time, and if you really want to get into the deepness of things. Well, we had other old Turks, really old, but they were Turks. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Masinde Muliro, George Mthenge, Salim Bamaris, Philip Gashoka, who was standing in for Matiba, and we were a formidable team. Martin Shikuku. We worked very well. And our efforts finally brought multi-party politics in this country. And Raila has told this in detail in that book. flames of freedom. The good thing with this book, as the Prof said and how the others have said, is that it condenses it in a language you can understand, in a time frame you can afford. I urge you. In fact, I'm going to appeal to Mountain publishers to behave like Progress publishers. Let us all be encouraged to write a series of books like this, accessible to people, readable, and educative politically. But let me wind the story forward. Lots of us who have been in the struggle, they have ties that bind us. There are ties that bind me, George Onini, ties that bind us with Kalonzo Musyoka, ties that bind us with Maswali, whatever. What is interesting, I must accept this, it's like a sinew which finally finds a knot. Raila Amolo Odinga is like that knot. We have grown up together, we were family, friends, comrades, but somehow he has emerged as a knot that puts together this sinew of struggle. Through tremendous sacrifice, persistence, and dedication. And let me tell you something about Raila, whom I've known because we've been together for so long, is that he accepts that there are problems and differences in politics. But finally we have to sit down and discuss them and find solutions. And that shows the sign of a man who is very humble. I give you two examples. Again, I'm going to and fro. I don't know whether Raila remembers this. In 2001, going on 2002, he had been in NDP, they joined KANU, for one good reason, that they believed they could transform KANU from within and take this country a step forward. I was in the SDP and finally we went to Kenya Democratic something. I can't now remember. But anyway, we were with Kibaki, Wamalo and all these people. We were all questing for a union. Then one day we sat together at the mall having lunch when I was a Minister for Energy. And he said, you know, you people, you must understand you have one cause. Let us talk to your colleagues. And we started talking. Then one day, Farah Malim and I were charged to go and talk with him, to go and talk to one politician. I won't mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him. And we went to talk to him. We talked and talked. And then I went to report to Raila and said, you know, we have talked to that fellow, but he says that he has worked with the Kikuyu before, but they have betrayed him. Raila laughed and asked me, who has not betrayed who in politics? Remember that question, who has not betrayed who in politics? What we want is unity to remove an authoritarian presidential regime from power, which is a hindrance to democracy in this country. That is the major point. And that is the point around which we must make tremendous sacrifices. The word sacrifice again. So, we are today launching a book of somebody some of you may not know very well, and somebody who we need to know very well because he's going to become our president. I must see you. Don't you believe that? Makofi kwangu basi. This team here, NASA leaders, Raila Amolo Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka the vice president, the deputy president, that is what he's going to be. And the team around him, these are going to be the most powerful men in this country with the support of the Kenyan people who vote for change in state power. And I think that's what the Prof was saying. But there's a reason why they are rising to get state power. That reason is what is condensed in this book. This power is not power for power's sake. This power is response to the tremendous sacrifices Raila Amolo Odinga has made through this journey as the node around which the sinews of change have historically been weaving around. And that is how history works. There was a book I once read called Individuals in History. How do certain individuals rise in history to play major roles? Others rise through very dubious means, as you heard that young lady say. They are not that great either. But those who make change, fundamental change in society, rise as a result of long-term vision, pushed by sacrifice and dedication, working with others and realize that times changes, and when times change, you also have to change accordingly. Bishop Augustine of Hippo, this is the last thing I'm saying about Raila. Bishop Augustine of Hippo once said that the most important in life is sometimes to think, to stop for a moment and think that you may not be right. One of the greatest things in life is that a time comes when you must stop for a moment and think that you may not be right. I would say maybe this is something that I share with Raila, but this is the greatest in him, because when you sit down in meetings and they're very controversial being made, he will listen. He will not say that I disagree with that point, but he will say, let us review that point again. Where is it taking us? Let us think for a moment that we may be wrong. Let us stop for a moment and think for a moment that we may be wrong. That's very important. Chairman Mao once went further, actually. Let us not forget Chairman Mao. He said, if you want to speak, remember one thing. Let me underline this. If you want to speak, remember one thing. No investigation, no right to speak. This book is a result of investigation, thinking, and going through history, so that in the final analysis, we may educate the public about what we are going to do. What we are going to do in the 8th of August, by going through this book, has been arrived at as somebody who quite often has stopped for a moment and realized that he may not be wrong, right? That he might be wrong. And as such, through investigation, through painful reading, sometimes waking up at 4 in the morning, and then it's fresh during the day to go to rallies, that's a sacrifice. I will tell you, our families sometimes don't like it that much. Agnes is looking at me and he knows why. Agnes, I'm assuming. Yeah. So that is another sacrifice. So don't think that this has been an easy thing. It's through the life of a man that through history has become a node around which our seniors of struggle have been woven. And a man finally, after such a long struggle, all of us are happy. I want us to be happy that on 8th of August, Kenya will make the right decision and put a man in the presidency with this deputy who have, through the ages, sacrificed for what is going to happen on the 8th. And the 8th of August is going to become to me like December 2002, when we ushered in the NAC government. But this time, fortunately, this time, we are not going to get somebody in power who does not believe in devolution. This time, we have got somebody in power who is determined that our constitution should be even better to realize the Kenya we deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the President of the Republic of Kenya, 5th President of the Republic of Kenya, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. My comrade, my friend, my guide, my leader in the ODM, whom I've served as Secretary General for 10 years, the man I respect, the man I welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, Raila Amolo Odinga on stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. You may be seated. Peter has, I think of introduced me. But I want to thank Peter all the same. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am very delighted to stand before you this evening. I see so many familiar faces in the audience who've come here today to witness the launching of this book. You can call it also a booklet. You can just call it Raila's little orange book, whatever. I want to first begin by thanking those who have spoken before me here. The young students from the universities who have spoken on behalf of the youth of Kenya. The learned professor, Manyora, who was well known, who has, I think, done a lot of justice to the book. And of course, my long-term comrade in arms, Professor Peter Nyang'yo. I also want to thank those who have worked with me on this book. First I begin with David D., who spoke at the beginning of this session. Yeah? Dennis Onyango, who is Director of Communications in my secretariat, and with whom we have worked for many years. Madam Sarah Elderkin, who is not with us here tonight, but with whom we have worked for a long time, and who took a lot of time in editing this book, as David Lee just told you. My family, my wife Aida, who is not here because she's just come from a tour of the Holy Land. My daughter Rosemary, my son Raila Jr., my other daughter Winnie Odinga, I don't know the Winnie is in the audience, and last but not least, is my little son, Fidel Odinga. Thank them for this support that they give me in this process of working on this book. I thought of writing this book some time back when I was on a sabbatical in the US, when I was based at the University of Boston in Massachusetts in 2014. I was doing a lot of research at the university, and I spent 3 months at the university there. One time I was invited to go and give a lecture at the university. And when I went and talked at the university, you know, the universities are very networked in the US. Within 2 days, I got an invitation to go and give a talk at Harvard University Law School. They were having a seminar. So I went and talked at Harvard Law School. And then within no time, I got a phone call saying, oh, from Columbia University. Did you know that the University of Columbia has got the biggest African Institute, African Studies Institute in the US? So I was invited to go and talk at the University of Columbia, which I went and did. Immediately, Princeton was calling. Oh, we want you to come and give the talk to Princeton University. And then I went and gave a lecture at Princeton University. I went thereafter to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. University of Elizabeth City in North Carolina, University of Massachusetts in Boston. Then I received an invitation to go to Stanford and Berkeley in California. But as you know, that's another part of the continent. So I was not able to go. But I was able to honor an invitation to go to Yale 1 year later, when they sent me a ticket to go and give a talk there. I've also given a talk at the Oxford University and the University of London Metropolitan that I did sometimes earlier this year. So, sitting down with my friends, they said, look, you've been, in the course of this period of time, you've given so many talks on so many different subjects. And we think that these things should not just go to waste, we can put them together in a book form. From the time when I was in the opposition, to the time when I was Minister for Energy, when I was Minister for Roads and Public Works, when I was a Prime Minister, and all those other lectures. So this book is a product of that. We've synthesized it. But not only that, we have complemented it with some other ideas, what we think about our country, where should our country go. If you look at Kenyan history, it's very similar to other African countries. At independence, you inherit a constitution that has been negotiated. The French, the Francophone countries with France. And most of the Anglophone countries were negotiated at Lancaster House through a conference. So they were not constitutions which were negotiated by the people of those countries. They were documents which were imposed from the House of Commons after negotiations at the Lancaster House Conference. That is the constitution that we've had from independence up to 2010. But I've been saying that when our people were fighting for independence, they were very united. A struggle against an alien rule. Because Kenya was made in Berlin, the Berlin Conference, where no Kenyan was represented. European masters, imperial masters just sat there and using, I don't know whatever they were using, drew lines across the African continent, giving them spheres of influence. But that is how the geographical space called Kenya was created. Then now Kenya got united to fight against an alien rule, colonialism. And during that period of time, there was no tribalism, because to a British, you were just a bloody African. They didn't care whether you were Kikuyu, or Jaluo, or Mkamba, you were just a bloody African. So people were very united in the struggle for liberation of the country. But immediately after independence was attained, then the nationalist movement split into two forces. And my thesis has been that from that time onward, there have been two forces in this country pulling in two opposite directions. The forces for retention of status quo versus the forces for change and reform. The forces for retention of status quo are those who wanted to supplant the outgoing colonial masters, step in the shoes of the colonial masters, and they used the privileged position that was left behind to lord it over their own fellow citizens. In other words, to rule the citizens. These are the people. So the governor is gone. There's a new governor in State House in the name of the president. Monsieur le Président and his people. And the other, in other words, used the administration as it was used by the colonial administration. Because as you know, the colonial system was a kind of a devolved system. You had the governor, the crown in England, the governor representing the crown, then the PC, then the DC, then the DO, then the chief, and the sub-chief, and the village elder. That was the colonial system. And then the police force, that was also being used to lord it over the people. The colonial police force was an anti-people police force. So the police force was there to buttress the colonial system. It was used to rule the natives. And that is why you still have, because the lack of reforms since the independence, you still have a very cruel police force, which is anti-people. So we, then on the other hand, you have the forces for change, which wanted to transform the society and make it more user-friendly to the people, a servant leadership, and also make the people, let the people participate more meaningfully in their governance and development. But these two forces have been pulling in two opposite directions. The forces for status quo was the forces for change and reform. That struggle has been long, sometimes it has been violent, but it has been consistent. It's against that background that you can explain assassination of Pio Gama Pinto, assassination of J.M. Kariuki, and so on and so forth. They are in our history. But then we looked at did the rain begin to beat us as a country? And the rain began to beat us when we coined what became like our blueprint for growth and development. Fundamental flaws, which, for example, where should the government invest and why? Give more priority to high-yielding areas, high-potential areas with a higher rate of return, and the marginalized regions will benefit from the trickle-down effect. And then the import substitution development in terms of industrialization. That if you can manufacture to satisfy the domestic market, then you can get protection against importation of similar goods in the country. But then you compare to export-oriented growth and development in Korea and in the Far East, in the Asian tigers, yielding completely different results. I've been saying so many times, and even economists will confirm it, that at the time of independence, Kenya and Korea, South Korea, were completely equal in terms of growth and development, in terms of per capita income, in terms of literacy levels, in terms of GDP, in terms of industrial development, and so on. And 54 years down the road, Korean economy is 54 times bigger than that of Kenya. It's 45 times bigger than that of Kenya. So if you want to understand the Kenyan problem, then you need to find out what did the Koreans do differently from Kenya. What did the Singaporeans do differently from Kenya? Professor Manyora was telling me about Lee Kuan Yew, the first Prime Minister of Singapore. When we formed the Grand Coalition government, we had a workshop with the cabinet in the School of Monetary Studies. And I went there with a copy of Lee Kuan Yew's book, from the third to first world by Lee Kuan Yew. And I said it is a mandatory reading for every minister to see how to do it and to know how not to do it. Because I don't believe that Koreans are special species of human beings, or the Chinese, different from us Africans. I have a real belief that our people have ability to do what those people have been able to do. My belief is that this leadership, or the lack of it, that is responsible for our backwardness to where we are today. And unless we change course and direction immediately, even 100 years from now, we will still be where we are today. This is the reason why Kenyans must make a decision on the 8th of August, which is next month. I believe strongly that Kenyans can do this. In my lecture in the US, I used to tell them why I believe that our people can also do it. I believe that our people properly challenged and given opportunity from the youth going upwards can do it. We first must begin, like the Chinese did, by manpower development, giving equal opportunity for all our children from the nursery up to high school, so that they can be able to realize their potential, natural potential in terms of education. And then skills training, so that people can become job creators instead of being job seekers. This is important. And that's why I'm dedicating this book to the youth of this country. And I'm challenging the youth, that the youth have the solution to the problem of this country. The youth need to take the mantle of change and bring about the change in this country. And the youth are the only ones who will be completely rid of this negative ethnicity which has kept this country apart. That the real Kenya has not emerged because Kenyans have been divided along the ethnic lines. And I've been saying that ethnicity is a disease of the elite. The elite in their competition for resources in the country are the ones who resort to ethnicity to protect themselves. When they find themselves in trouble, oh, I'm being sacrificed because of my tribe. We are being finished. We're being finished. Yet when he sits there and is eating, he does not eat on behalf of the tribe. So these youth are the ones who will help us to bring change in our country. Take the mantle in their hands and bring about the change that this country so much desires, the Kenyan youth. So they have also shown that they're ready to make sacrifice. When we were on the streets fighting to remove the IBC, the youth were with us in the front. They were not scared. They said, tumeshinda tear gas. Tunataka bomb. Tumeshinda tear gas. Tunataka bomb. And we marched on with them until eventually they had to yield in and get the IBC out of the way. And in the olden days there, during the struggle for independence, the youth made the ultimate sacrifice. I was telling you that the colonial system was even more ruthless. The youth were always in front. And you saw me singing the song that the youth used to sing in those days for the struggle for independence. So we want to give our youth an opportunity as NASA. This is going to be our priority number one when we take over. I have been saying in those lectures, I say that this one lecture that I give is talking about the African land. And I say that I am a Pan-Africanist and I'm an Afro-optimist as opposed to Afro-pessimist. Afro-pessimists are those people who have given up on Africa, who look at Africa as a lost cause, a basket economy, which cannot be salvaged. Afro-optimists are those who believe in the ability of the African people to develop Africa. I belong to that school. But I also subscribe to Nkrumah's theory, which Manyora also believes in, that seek ye the political kingdom first, and everything else shall be built upon it. So I'm saying that the story of the African land challenging the Asian tiger. African land sends a message to Asian tiger and tells it that Asian tiger, you have danced on the stage for far too long alone. When I was asleep in the jungles of the Congo, the European bear retreated a long time ago to the poles. The same thing with the American panda. But now I'm awake as an African lion, and I am sitting in the African forest, bounded by the mighty Nile to the east, and the Gambia to the west, the Niger to the west, the Limpopo and the Mbezi to the south, the Congo in the middle. I am sitting on top of African gold, African diamond, African bauxite, African iron ore, African oil. And I have the ability to transform this wealth into prosperity for my people of Africa. And I will do just that and reclaim the 21st century as truly the African century. Message of African land to the Asian tiger. So I want to conclude by quoting the former president of the United States of America, who is also a friend of mine, Mr. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton just to say that those of us entrusted with the leadership must go back to the simple yet complex lesson that President Bill Clinton came up with. Clinton said that if he were to sum up his view of public life, it would come down to this. 1. Are people better off when you quit than when you started? 2. Do children have a brighter future? Are things coming together instead of being torn apart? I believe in this simple doctrine. I believe it will serve our country, and I commend it particularly to our young people. I, together with my colleagues here, 2 of them here, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, Honorable Salim Davadi, Honorable Moses Wetangula, and Honorable Isaac Ruto are not here with the reasons and excuses. But the 5 of us have signed a covenant between us that we will work together as a team to deliver this country from where it is to where we want it to be, where Kenya wants to be, which will help us to realize the Kenyan dream. the Kenyan dream as coined by the founding fathers of our nation. And you find it in our national anthem, that God of all creation, bless this land, our land and nation. Justice be our shield and defender. May we dwell in unity, peace and liberty. Plenty be found within our borders. That's the Kenyan dream, which has eluded us. We believe that we have what it takes to realize it. I am grateful to these four gentlemen for having confidence in me and giving me the opportunity to run for the president of this country. And I have given them an assurance that I will not let them down. And I'm sure that if we work together, we will be able to deliver this country on the 8th of August. So I say that it is a responsibility of all of us, and particularly the youth of this country, to liberate this country on the 8th of August so that we can start the journey to realize the Kenyan dream. Long live Kenya. I would like to invite my co-principals to come up the stage. So, as they join me here for the unveiling, I just want to make an announcement. First, that this book eventually will be sold at 200 shillings a copy. But everybody in here is going to get a copy. Most of our people are not going to buy it. I'm going to get a friend to make contributions to buy it so that I can be able to distribute it to our members when you go to rallies for free. Because we want it to be read as widely as possible by most of our people, particularly the youth, so that they know exactly what we stand for and what we want to do for this country when we take power next month.
Okay, so Honorable Raila, kindly do the honors to unveil the book. Makofi tafadhali. Thank you. In the interest of time, we are going to have a signing ceremony here. We will have copies of the book signed by the Honorable Raila Odinga for our co-principals, our Deputy President, the Honorable Kalonzo, and my three students, Angela, Mohammad, and David. You will also get copies. Sheikh, please. join the queue. So we'll have photos. Senator Haniri. Senator Haniri, please come up. Senator Nyongo. Governor Asanga. I'm told my senior Senator Orengo has arrived. Makofi.
Thank you. Thank you.
The three students, where are they? David, Angie, Mohammad. DJ music, please. The students follow each other the way you are, please. Our deciding is going on. We want to invite all of us to a cocktail session at the back. Please feel free. I believe it's an open bar. But if there are any bills, you can send them to the Senate, Nairobi.
Yeah.